Okay, so you're saying there's an aspect of regulation that we haven't talked about, and you want to make sure we have a little conversation about this. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what is it you want to add?
So this is something we didn't get to talk about yet. So in the occasion that we get to the place of like some level of regulation, whether that's, medical use only, or even, if we get all the way to recreational use of these substances and it's legalized for general consumption in that format, we have to consider that, there's people who are advocating for like plant-based stuff, but then that leaves out the things that are synthetic that have a lot of value, whether that's medical or recreational or in between.
Mhm.
So, for example, like 5-MeO-DMT, comes from bufotode, and it's already in danger. Like there's environmental costs
Yeah.
for this type of thing, and something like 5-MeO-DMT is actually safer for the user when it's created synthetically,
Mm.
without having to harm the toad at all in any of the habitat and the population of the toad.
If you
Um,
have, if you have a resource on that, Mohawk, that would be really useful, because I read people talking about, but yeah, you don't get the same experience if you don't do the
it's
toad. You got to
actually
do the toad.
it's actually there's so many other things. There's actually so many other things in the toad venom that it's a much cleaner and safer experience if you just isolate the chemical, which is the 5-MeO-DMT,
Mm.
and do it. It ends up being like a much more potent version of DMT, which is already relatively safe as far as like how your body handles it. So, like for
Interesting.
example, that is something that I would heavily advocate for being synthetic. Like people have this appeal to nature that where they think that when something is closer to nature or straight out of nature, that it's better for you, and
Mm.
that's not necessarily true, and that's anti-scientific. So,
Mm.
I think that's something that doesn't get talked about a lot,
Yeah,
but
that
it
we
should
want
be
it.
part of the conversation of regulation, so we don't
Yeah.
have the same thing happening to our drugs that's happening to our food chain, where we're destroying the environment.
Yeah, gotcha.
So,
So just to kind of wrap up that point, that as we advocate for, in terms of access to psychedelics, as we advocate for decriminalization and legalization and regulation of psychedelic substances, we also want to pay attention to how these substances are produced. There may be this inclination or this insistence that these substances need to be natural. They're plant-based, they need to be natural, but that could have some adverse effects for the environment, and also actually may not give sort of the purest, most reliable and healthy experience when we could also synthesize these substances. So we just want to be mindful about this, that legalization is sort of not a free for all. And we want to make sure that we are conscious in the way that we develop these consciousness expanding substances for ourselves. Thanks, Mohar. I
right.
really, really appreciate
Yeah.
that.